The belief in witchcraft in medieval Europe. The belief in witchcraft has existed since ancient times. However, from the 5th-10th century onwards, this belief turned into institutionalized terror. Witch hunts became widespread in many parts of Europe, especially in Catholic and Protestant communities. The Church firmly believed that devil-worshipping witches existed. This belief was systematized in 1487 with the book Malleus Maleficarum, The Hammer of Witches, written by a priest named Heinrich Kramer. The book read as follows: "Women are weak by nature. The devil takes advantage of this weakness and uses them for evil." This book became the main source of witch trials in Europe for almost 200 years. Women were tortured and declared witches just because their neighbor's cow died, just because they were quiet and withdrawn, just because they were curious about nature. The heroine of our story, Anna, 1629, a small village in Bavaria, Germany. Anna is a 38-year-old widow. Her husband died a few years ago in the plague. She lives with her 2 small children. She tries to help the people of the village by making herbal teas and ointments from the herbs she grows in her garden. But Anna has a lack. She is not very talkative among women. She does not submit to men. She stands on her own 2 feet. And another flaw, one of the village elders tries to interest her, but Anna refuses. Then one day, the child of one of the rich families in the village suddenly has a fever. The doctor can't find anything. Anna has been touched by the evil eye, the woman's mother says in tears, and that's all. Nothing more is needed. In the middle of the night, Anna's house is raided by soldiers. Hey, drag her out while her children scream. She is blindfolded and chained, and taken to the church in the village square. The charge is clear: witchcraft, interrogation, and torture. When Anna was dragged into a stone dungeon, chained and blindfolded, she lost all sense of time. She had no shoes. The soles of her feet were cut, her body trembling with exhaustion. The inside of the dungeon was damp, the moisture running down the walls mixed with the dirty water on the floor. The iron cuffs wrapped around his torso began to squeeze not only his body, but gradually his soul as well. The door creaked open. 3 men entered. One was carrying a thick book. The other was a priest in a long black robe. The 3rd man was the executioner. In their hands were iron hooks, ropes dangling from a torture board, their eyes empty with habit. First the papers were taken out. The church official bowed to Anna. "What is your name?" "Anna. Do you admit it? That you are in league with the devil? That you fly at night? That you infect children?" Anna remained silent. Her eyes were teary, but her pride was still there. "I am only a healer," she said. "I help people. I have never harmed anyone." This answer was not enough, because this was not an interrogation but a ritual of punishment. The executioner rubbed his hands. "He hasn't confessed yet," he said. "Then the devil is protecting him." On the first day, he was only starved and dehydrated. He was not allowed to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he was awakened by a slap. The floor was cold, the cloth on his back was thin, but he still resisted. On the second day, metal rings were put around his body. He was hung from the ceiling by his ankles. This was the suspension method. The woman's weight pulled on her shoulders. Her joints felt like they were going to pop out. Every time she screamed, she was met only with silence. Those screams hit the stone walls and returned to her. On the 3rd day, the water test was administered. They tied his hands, loaded his body with heavy stones, and took him to the edge of a river. The villagers watched. Some prayed, some thought she was really a witch, others wept silently. If she sank when she was thrown into the water, she would be considered innocent, but she would drown. If she stayed on the surface, they would say that the devil was protecting her. Anna did not sink because of the wool's resistance to water. That was enough for them. They brought her back to the dungeon. Her resistance was now broken, but her voice was still not completely silent. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. The priest spoke with a cold expression on his face, as if he was on a holy mission. "The only way to be saved is to confess. Surrender your soul to God, admit it. Say that you slept with the devil, that you flew, that you spread disease, On the 4th day, his toes were bruised and his arms were weak. Her head was buzzing. Now his past was blurred, the faces of his children hazy. Only the pain was clear. And in that moment she broke. Her eyes filled, she bowed her head. Yes, yes, whatever you say. It's all true. Yes, the devil visited me. Yes, I made the children sick. Just end it? Just shut up, This was not a confession. It was a cry of surrender, but it was enough for the church. Everything became a signature and a sealed document. The record reads, "The accused Anna, of her own free will, pleads guilty. Punishment, death by burning at the stake." But Anna's will was no longer there. She was left in the dungeon. This is not justice. This is organized fear. This is a shameful ritual of humanity. And history will record that in these interrogation rooms not only bodies were tortured, but also consciences. Execution burning at the stake. Dawn had not yet broken. On that ominous morning, as the air began to turn gray, the church bells rang 3 times. It was not just a call. It was an announcement of punishment. Quietly but quickly, the villagers awoke and came out of their homes and gathered around the large stone platform in the square. Everyone had the same expression on their faces, silence mixed with fear, curiosity, and helplessness. Anna was no longer a person, but a specimen. Shackled by her hands and feet, she was led into the square with slow steps. The clothes she was wearing were no longer her own. She was wearing a rough linen dress that had been left out to dry. He had no shoes, no head covering. His hair was disheveled, his eyes black from lack of sleep, his lips chapped. But in all that brokenness, there was still a human look. That look said, "I am not guilty." But there were no eyes to see it, no ears to listen. A structure was prepared with a thick stake in the center, surrounded by dry wood. The executioners stacked the wood carefully. They chose the ones that were not wet, the ones that were well dried, the ones that would produce the biggest flame in the shortest time. This was not just a death, but an exemplary spectacle. The priest approached with a Bible. In the presence of the crowd, he called Anna to confess her sins for the last time. This was not a call for salvation, but for a final surrender. Anna shook her head slightly from side to side. At that moment, an indescribable expression appeared on her face, a combination of fear, exhaustion, and acceptance. The executioners tied him tightly to the stake. The executioners tied him tightly to the stake. They wrapped her hands behind her back, her arms pressed against her torso. He was tied tightly with ropes around his chest, waist, and ankles. In those moments, there was a deep silence in the square. The crowd seemed not to breathe. The first flame started when the straw under the dry wood was ignited. After a short crackle, a fire of yellow and orange began to rise. Close-up of straw catching fire under a pile of wood, flames flickering upwards, soft crackling sound. As the flames moved upwards, Anna first raised her head to the sky. Her lips moved. Maybe she prayed. Maybe she whispered the names of her children. Or maybe she just said, "Let it be over." When the flames reached her waist, she no longer screamed. Her body shook with the flames. The moment his skin burned, a heavy smell of burning filled the square. Some spectators averted their eyes, others began to pray. But no one dared to save her. Because that morning, not only Anna was being burned, but also the conscience of humanity. Anna's scream disappeared into history. No tombstone was left behind, no lament. Only ashes, and a silence justice mixed with ashes. Social engineering of fear. The witch hunts were a system of fear production rather than a belief. The more people were afraid, the more powerful the system became. This fear was engraved on women's bodies. Silence is the language of this fear. It is passed down from generation to generation, the inheritance of social trauma. What Anna experienced was not only physical torture, but also the suppression of her identity as a woman. What made her a criminal was not a crime, but an existence, her being a woman. They grew up with the stigma of their mother as a witch. This trauma caused women to remain invisible for years. Because the fear of being misunderstood is actually the legacy of the fear of having once been punished by burning. Identity and resistance. But this silence could not last forever. In the 19th and 20th centuries, with the rise of the women's movement, the names of many women like Anna were reborn in unwritten history books, in the whispers of herbs and folk tales. To tell the story of Anna and others like her is not just to remember the past, but to shape the present and the future. Social trauma does not pass without confrontation. And confrontation begins with telling stories. If history remains silent, fear wins. If women speak, the future changes. Anna's scream was suppressed not only by fire, but also by silence. But today, every word, every movie, every story that breaks that silence is a monument erected in her name. Anna's story may be over, but it does not end with listening to her, because her cry still echoes in the buried soil of history. Now I ask you, when we as a society judge someone as different today, are those ancient fears inside us speaking? Or are we still around those stakes? Humanity can only heal through confrontation. Memory is a prerequisite for justice. So let us not forget Anna's story. Let us be the ones who understand her, not the ones who burned her.